Hello, everybody. We're Group 2, and we did a case study on increasing walking through implementation of a token economy. My name's Sherry, and I'm from Virginia.
My name's Ashley, and I'm also from Virginia.
I'm Diana, and I'm from Indiana.
I'm Harley, and I'm from Georgia.
I'm Jasmine, and I'm Clark, and I'm from Pennsylvania.
All right. I will be discussing the literature that supports our study. In the following research article by Rebecca Bernard, Token Economy to Increase Exercise on Children with Cystic Fibrosis. It examines the effectiveness of a token economy to increase aerobic exercise in children with cystic fibrosis, or CF. In this study, there were 3 females that participated that had CF. They used a single subject ABAB design. And in order for them to measure how difficult the activities were for the children, they used a scale called Children's OMNI Omni, which is a self-report that went from 0 to 10. 0 indicated that they weren't tired at all, and 10 that they were very, very tired. This allowed the children to rate their level of tiredness for the variety of exercise types and intensities that they were given. This study used a token economy which consisted of the children earning prizes for the amount of points they received when they completed an exercise. For their results, they found that overall, the token economies appeared to be a viable treatment technique for children with CF. Mainly because they were really relatively time effective and cost efficient, which is something that our study also had. But moreover, because the token economies are easy to understand and implement, and given the extensive treatment regimen for the children with CF, it is important for the treatment to also be beneficial for the family and the child. And the token economy that they used met both of those criteria. So in all, the results showed that they did effectively increase the exercise. In the second article that I found that supported our original study was the effects of token reinforcement on physical activity and intrinsic motivation by Andrew Alstott. And the purpose of this study was to examine the effects of extrinsic rewards, which administered as a token economy. They used 2 schedules of reinforcement, a fixed interval schedule and a variable interval schedule, on the intensity of riding a stationary bicycle, as well as its influence on intrinsic motivation to engage in physical activity. And participants in this study were to ride a bike for several 20-minute sessions. During baseline, participants rode for 20 minutes without any reward, just like our original study, where during baseline we had no token economy. And then during the first token session, participants were rewarded 1 token for every minute above their 10% baseline mean. So this article found that token economies can be useful in improving the physical activity of those who are reinforced. However, to improve performance while increasing or maintaining intrinsic motivation, physical activity professionals needed to consider introducing extrinsic rewards to improve the behavior and subsequently withdrawing them systematically. So for our third research article that we found that supports our study was the effects of a token economy on distance walked by senior citizens in a retirement center. As well as this study examines how effective the approach developed by the researchers to increase exercise behavior in senior citizens would be, and they also used a token economy. The participants in this study were 6 females, which was also the same as our study. However, we had 5 females, but it was different from the original study. And this was between the ages of 70 to 92. They had 3 criteria that they had to meet before being able to participate in the study. Those consisted of able to walk unassisted, no known cardiovascular or physiological problems, and they couldn't plan any vacation during the duration. They also used a token economy program. This one was that they had to accumulate tokens or points in which they could exchange it for certain privileges. Those privileges were either food items or social recognition. The study was conducted on a daily basis, just like our study, which was Monday through Friday, completing the baseline and intervention phase. The results of this study was that all 6 participants increased their walking behavior from the baseline phase to the intervention phase by 56%, with an average being 85%. Therefore, the study results showed that the token economy is effective in increasing the exercise behavior of the senior citizens. And then
Our next article in our supporting literature was conducted by Andrew Allstott in 2012. Allstott examined the effects of peer-administered token reinforcement on jump rope behaviors of elementary physical education students. He used an alternating treatment design, and the study paired the tokens with reinforcement to increase the behavior of jumping rope. According to the author, the study forewent a reinforcer preference assessment and thus rather utilized a pre-stocked store that consisted of 4 containers that each held items of different values. Students had the option to spend their tokens at the store the same day or to save the tokens until a later date, accumulating tokens to exchange for more expensive reinforcers. The following implementation of this alternating treatment design, research results indicated that 9 out of the 10 participants showed an increase in the number of successful jump rope practice trials during token reinforcement sessions as compared to baseline sessions. So our next supporting literature was also conducted by Andrew Allstott. This followed 3 years later in 2015. This study reviewed the effects of peer-administered token economy on 2nd grade physical education students' overhand throw performance. The study also utilized an alternating treatment design, foregoing a reinforcer preference assessment, and had 4 pre-stocked reinforcer containers that each held items of different values. Again, the students were allowed to spend their tokens at the store the same day or save them until a later date, accumulating tokens to exchange for more expensive reinforcers. This study also yielded this type of token economy intervention to be effective, as all 7 participants in this study resulted in a functional relationship between token reinforcement and overhand throw performance.
The original study was conducted by Haley Krentz and Raymond Molzenberger and Diego Balbuena and published in the Journal of Applied Behavioral Analysis in 2016. The study focused on using token reinforcement to increase walking for adults with intellectual disability using an ABA-B reversal design. The 5 participants earned tokens for walking 50-meter laps and exchanged tokens for backup reinforcers that had been identified through the preference assessment. The authors concluded that token reinforcement resulted in a substantial increase from baseline in laps walked for 4 of the 5 total participants. The purpose of this project, the purpose of the study was to determine if implementing a token economy along with vocal reinforcements in the form of a praise will increase the total walking distance in 1 hour using an ABAV reversal design. The 5 participants replicated the study and earned tokens every 50 meters walked. At the end of each session, tokens were exchanged for backup reinforcements and were identified through preference assessments. And also the purpose of the study was also generalized, increasing our physical activity and endurance.
Next, we'll go over the method section. The method section will include participants and setting, materials, behavioral definition of the target behavior, data collection, baseline and treatment phases, inter-observer agreement, and treatment fidelity. The participants in this study consisted of 5 females between the ages of 25 and 34 who had no physical disabilities or intellectual disabilities. The study was conducted in each participant's neighborhood, and each participant walked for a total duration of 1 hour. The materials used in the study consisted of a phone with a Nike Club Run app to measure the total distance walked in 1 hour. Tokens were delivered on individual clickers. In addition, textual prompts were created on slips of paper in order for each participant to provide vocal praise every 25 meters walked. In addition, a preference assessment was administered to assess potential reinforcers. A physical activity readiness questionnaire was used to confirm that participants had no health risk. A data collection sheet was also included to document meters walked, and selected backup reinforcers were readily available to be earned and delivered. All right, so the behavior measured in the study is total meters walked in 1 hour. Walking is defined as moving at a constant pace by lifting and setting down each foot in turn. Walking does not include having both feet off the ground at once or a body that is not in motion. A meter is defined as the fundamental unit of length in the metric system, equal to 100 centimeters or approximately 39.37 inches. An hour is defined as a period of time equal to a 24th part of a day and night, and then divided into 60 minutes. As far as data collection, the dependent variable in the study is total meters walked in 1 hour, and our independent variable is the implementation of a token economy paired with vocal reinforcement. Duration and event recording using the Nike Run app were used to track the total number of miles walked in 1 hour time periods. Within each session, a clicker was used to deliver tokens every 50 meters walked. Data included meters walked and tokens earned, and then it was all transferred onto the data sheet after the completion of each session. An ABAB single subject design was conducted to determine if a token economy is effective in increasing the total distance walked. Baseline was conducted, and once baseline was stable, intervention in the form of a token economy was introduced for 5 days. The token economy was then withdrawn, and once stability was achieved, the token economy was reintroduced one last time as the intervention. Baseline was conducted for a total of 3 sessions. Each participant walked in their neighborhoods for a total duration of 1 hour or until the participant was done walking. All participants used their personal cell phones with the Nike Run app downloaded to track duration and miles walked. After the conclusion of each baseline session, miles walked was converted to meters and was transferred to the data collection sheet. Participants did not receive any feedback, praise, or reinforcement during the baseline phases. A multiple stimulus without replacement preference assessment was also self-administered during the first baseline phase. It was administered a total of 3 times to determine a hierarchy with preferences across items for each participant. A token exchange was also established on each participant's baseline levels of walking, and more of that will be discussed later on in the PowerPoint. The intervention phases, which included the first token reinforcement phase and second token reinforcement phase, was implemented across all participants. Each intervention session was conducted for 1 hour on weekdays in each participant's neighborhood. Prior to starting each session, participants gathered their materials, which included the phone with a Nike Run app ready to go, clickers to administer tokens, and textual prompts in their pockets to deliver reinforcement. At the beginning of each session, participants pushed start on the Nike Run app and started walking. Every 25 meters walked, each participant provided themselves with vocal reinforcement using the textual prompts, which included awesome, good job, you're walking for blank, whatever reinforcer they were working with, and to keep up the hard work. Every 50 meters walked, each participant reinforced themselves with a token in the form of a click on a clicker. Once the duration of an hour was met, each participant stopped walking and recorded meters walked on the data sheet collection, as well as how many tokens were earned during that session. Each participant was then able to exchange tokens earned with their pre-selected backup reinforcers. Participants were allowed to accumulate tokens to exchange for items that cost more. If at any time a participant refused to walk, they did not earn a token.
The intra-observer agreement was calculated by total count of meters walked during sessions. Smaller frequency count divided by the large count, then multiplied by 100 to find the percent of the intra-observer agreement. The IOA was calculated for 2 sessions during each intervention phase, sessions 4, 6, 13, and 15. All participants were 100% in agreement with data collected across individuals. So below is a table representing a primary data collector and reliability data collector IOA data collection percentage across sessions for each participant. Okay, to ensure that the intervention was implemented with accuracy and consistency across participants, each participant completed a treatment fidelity checklist 2 times per week. And the questions on the treatment fidelity checklist consist of all materials presented. Did the participants deliver tokens with clickers every 50 meters walked? Did the participants provide verbal reinforcement within 5 seconds after token delivery? And did the participants provide verbal reinforcements every 25 meters? And did the participants walk the entire hour?
Next, we will discuss our results, and you'll see graphs from each participant. Depicted here is a chart of all participant phase averages and phase ranges. It is important to note that each participant completed each phase at their individual rate and did not change phases until there was a trend line established. Each participant completed the study within a 5-week time frame, and all participants, as stated before, used the Nike Run app to record their distance traveled in an hour.
So I'm Harley. This chart shows the session number, condition, total meters walked, and the number of tokens received throughout the study. Here is my graph. This is a visual representation of the functional relationship between my baseline and intervention phases. In baseline 1, I walked an average of 90 laps with a range of 84 to 95. When the token economy intervention was introduced, my average number of laps increased from 90 to 121 laps, with a range of 113 to 130. During baseline 2, the intervention was withdrawn, and therefore my total number of laps decreased. This helps to show the functional relationship of that I was less motivated to walk when there was not a token economy and reinforcer in place. So during this phase, I walked an average of 102 laps. And during the last treatment phase, when the token economy was reintroduced, I increased my total number of laps completed and therefore ended with an average of 115 laps in a range of 101 to 130.
All right, this is mine. My name's Ashley. This is my chart that breaks down the meters walked and the tokens earned with each session. All right, so here is my visual representation of data collected. As you can see, there is a functional relationship between the dependent and the independent variable. I achieved a stable baseline with an average of 81 laps walked during the first baseline phase. Once the token economy was introduced, laps walked increased with a stable trend at an average of 96 laps. Once the token economy was withdrawn, a decrease in performance occurred with an average of 81. And once the second baseline phase became stable, the token economy was reintroduced. And during the second phase of intervention, data reflects a stable trend with an average of 96 laps per hour.
So my name is Jasmine. So this is my chart, and it shows the session numbers, total meters walked, and tokens earned each day. And here is my graph, visual representative of the functional relationship between my baseline and intervention phases. So the first baseline one, I averaged 101 laps of the range between 100 and 102. And going over to my intervention, I increased from an average of from the range of 101 to 109 laps. And going to my baseline 2, you see that I decreased due to weather problems, issues that can, that's why I didn't do as well. And then now going to my last intervention when the token economy was reintroduced, laps completed, or I ended with an average of 112 laps between the range of 108 to 117.
All right, my name is Diana, and this is my chart, and it is set up for baseline, token economy, baseline 2, and token economy. There is a detail that I need to mention are the stars next to the number of tokens given, and that those stars next to those numbers just simply means that I did not complete the whole hour. Those were because either of weather or it was getting too dark. But that is just something to take into account. And in my next slide, you should see this is my graph. My results also demonstrated a functional relationship between the dependent and independent variable. During baseline of week 1, I had an average of 46 laps per hour and a slight increase in the last data points of week 1 baseline. In my intervention of week 2, you can also see I did have a significant increase with an average of 74. Perhaps because of the weather, my reinforcement was high, which was probably my motivator behind how many laps I walked. In baseline for week 3, we can see that I have a stable trend with an average of 71, which there was no reinforcement given during this time. That's why I dropped. And then for my last week, week 4 of intervention, the token economy was reintroduced, and I had an average of 86, where I did have an increase as well, but dropped a little bit in my last data points.
My name is Sherry, and this is my chart. Next, you'll see my graph, but it's important to note here that while I was in my initial phase of baseline, just like Diana, I did not complete an hour's worth of walking for 3 data sessions. This was due to some limitations that will be discussed later in our PowerPoint. Next is my graph, and this is a visual representation of those data points recently viewed. My baseline average was 59 laps completed, and my laps completed ranged from 33 to 73 in my first phase of baseline. Baseline data was collected across 3 sessions. After baseline, I moved into my first phase of intervention, where I delivered tokens and written praise to myself while completing my walk, with the end goal in mind of trading in my tokens for a secondary reinforcer. In my first phase of intervention, my average was 105, and data was collected until there was a steady trend. My lap completion numbers ranged from 98 to 109. After my first phase of intervention, I walked without any form of reinforcement or praise for a second round of baseline. And as you can see, my average lap completion dropped from the first phase of intervention, but was higher than my initial baseline phase. This is because I did not walk for a complete hour in my baseline sessions due to circumstances discussed in the limitations section. My second baseline phase had an average of 91 and a range of 81 to 106. After the second round of baseline, I then reintroduced the tokens and praise. As you can see, my lap completion numbers increased significantly, proving a functional relationship across all phases of data collection. And in my second intervention phase, I had an average of 107 laps walked in an hour with a range of 81 to 119. According to my graph, token economy and written praise was proven to be successful in increasing my overall lap completion numbers within an hour. Next, we will discuss our preference assessment results. As discussed earlier, prior to the start of baseline, all participants completed a preference assessment to establish a hierarchy of secondary reinforcers. Our group decided to stick to reinforcers that were easily accessible, quick, and cost-effective, meaning most of them were consumable. The original study did not have any limitations on cost or accessibility or being consumable. But as you can see, our chart shows that each participant's hierarchy of consumable reinforcements. For example, Diana, lowest ranked reinforcer item is a chocolate chip muffin. And then one step up from that was a caramel frappuccino. And a step up from that was a York candy. And a step up from that was pizza. And her highest ranked reinforcer was a Coke. Next, you will see the exchange rate and the percentage of reinforcers chose for each participant. The exchange rate was based on each participant's baseline levels in both phases. Initial baseline levels were used to determine the exchange rate for intervention phase 1. Baseline phase 2 levels were used to determine the exchange rate for intervention phase 2. The lowest preferred reinforcement item was the baseline average, and the highest preferred reinforcement item was the baseline average multiplied by 5. So for example, looking at Diana again, in phase 1, her baseline average was 46, so the cost of a chocolate chip muffin was 46 tokens. And her baseline average in phase 2 was 71, so the cost of a chocolate chip muffin was 71 tokens. And the numbers increased from there up to a Coke, where her baseline, we took baseline times 5 to get the token reinforcement exchange rate of 230 and 355. Also, you can see under the percent of selection in phase 1, Diana chose a York candy 30% of the time, pizza 30% of the time, a chocolate chip muffin 35% of the time, and a Coke 5% of the time. And then after going back into baseline and re-entering phase 2 interventions, she decided to choose pizza 50% of the time and Coke 50% of the time.
So throughout the replication process of the given study, our group came across many limitations. The original study consisted of 5 males with mild to moderate intellectual disabilities, whereas our study consisted of 5 females who did not have any current diagnosis of intellectual disabilities. As for the original study, sessions were conducted from 9 to 10 a.m. on weekdays at an outside covered corridor where cones were used to mark 50-meter laps, which were walked in the same location for all sessions by participants. Due to each participant living in a different area, we were unable to directly replicate these measures. This was due to poor or severe weather conditions, for example, rain, hurricanes, or below freezing temperatures, personal and or family scheduling discrepancies such as weddings, work schedules, the birth of a child, or illness, and the overall safety of participants due to the availability of adequate lighting if walking occurred before or after sunset or sunrise, access to safety equipment such as reflective gear, or safety of outdoor locations equipped for walking. So for our replication study, data was collected for any 1-hour period during the weekday at an outside location, which may have varied each day. In the absence of present cones to mark a 50-meter lap due to location restraints, instead, our group used a free cell phone application called the Nike Run Club app, which we use to track duration and distance walked. Another limitation we came across was that we had to modify the way in which praise and tokens were delivered. The original study utilized an outlying person to administer tokens following each completed lap, as well as social praise 5 seconds after participants placed a token in their reinforcement bags at the end of a lap, and every other time the participants reached the opposite side of a lap. Due to the lack of availability of constant outlying persons for each participant, our tokens were delivered personally by the individual participant in the form of a click on a clicker to indicate 1 50-meter lap walk. Social praise was delivered in the form of textual praise on small slips of paper and carried in participants' pockets, and also delivered personally by the individual participant following each completed lap and every other time the participant reached the other half of the lap. For our preference assessment, it was also different from the original study. The original study utilized any sort of reinforcer listed on the preference assessment, which ranged anywhere from $9 to $53 per participant. As a group, we chose to use edible, consumable reinforcers to be easily administered as well as to be more cost efficient throughout our study.
All right, so as stated before, all participants completed a preference assessment and results were shared with you in our presentation. There was a functional relationship identified across all participants. We did have an outcome goal of increasing the number of 50-meter laps completed in an hour, as did our original study. Overall, our group agrees that a token economy, written praise, verbal praise, and secondary reinforcers are an effective method in increasing the number of 50-meter laps walked in an hour, as well as all members of the group increase their total number of 50-meter laps walked by the end of the study. We do agree, though, that without the use of the token economy, this skill may be hard to maintain independently and generalize across settings, as all numbers did drop in both phases of baseline for all participants. And lastly, you will see our references. And thank you for watching.
Bye.